Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to discuss yet another topic that seems to me that is a little bit controversial. I did a video a while back, could be several months, and in the video, I was asking the question, why is there so much dislike between the Oromo and the Somali people? And there are so many people who commented on that video. Many told me that there are issues, maybe to do with the resources or political issues, but there are also very, very, very many who told me that actually there is not so much hatred between the two groups. It's just that sometimes people just talk. It's kind of like banter. It's not like so deep as it might sound. Um, yeah, sometimes it sounds like there's so much dislike, but there are so many. While there are others who told me there are differences that have emerged over the years, hundreds of years, especially because the Oromo found themselves being part of what came to be known as the Ethiopian Republic or the monarchy. It was a monarchy up to late 1960s. Um, that made them to technically be like enemies of the Somalis, because not directly, but because as the saying goes, the friend of my enemy is my enemy, sort of. You know what I'm talking about. And this because of what happened in late 19th century when Emperor Menelik managed to bring the Oromo people under the rule of the Abyssinian monarchy. And of course, they became citizens of that monarchy. And as like all citizens, of course, they had responsibilities. And of course, if you are a citizen of a state or a republic or a monarchy, of course, you have responsibilities of, for example, paying taxes and joining the armies or serving in the army. Those are very basic responsibilities of a citizen. And so when the Oromos became part of the Abyssinian monarchy, of course, they were citizens, and that meant that they needed to, or they had to perform their responsibilities, and they joined the army and they served in the army of Menelik and, of course, Haile Selassie and the others who ruled over Abyssinia. And of course, after the end of the monarchy, they've continued being citizens, even though they've had issues, of course, with the state. Of course, there has been an attempt by the people to create their own state, which has been a huge conflict, of course, for a long time. And yeah, of course, they've also managed to rise up in the leadership of the republic that has emerged after Mengistu Haile Mariam was, it is said, was an Oromo, and the current, of course, prime minister is. And so they are part and parcel of what Ethiopia has become. And I would say maybe it's very unfair to expect them or to dislike them because of that, because number one, they found themselves in that state, we can say to some extent by force. And also, they they've attempted to leave that state. So I don't think you can really hold it against them, or you can hold them being citizens of that state against them if that dislike comes through, because that seems to be the biggest issue with those who've told me that there is actually, or there are issues between the Roma and the Somalis, which are not as many. I would think, or I think the majority of people told me that is, for the most part, is just banter. It's not anything serious, really. Political differences, we can call them, which are everywhere. In Kenya, we have such. We have people from some communities who don't see eye to eye, politically speaking, but you'll find them hanging out together in social places and having doing business together. It's no big deal. It's a big deal, of course, political, but you get what I'm trying to say. Now, this video, I'm going to attempt to explore the question, or try to answer the question: are the Somalis and the Oromo people who came from the same society, at least at some point. Some people disagree. Some people say no, they didn't. But I think there is a lot of evidence to show that at some point they did belong in the same society. They did belong into the same commonwealth or the same society. Maybe at least society. We might not go and say state for sure, commonwealth for sure. But society, I think for sure they did. And here is exhibit number one. There is nobody who disputes, at least successfully, that the language of the Somali and the language of the Oromo, the different, including the different dialects, that those languages don't seem to be very closely related. Of course, if you watch my videos, you know I have a problem with categorizing people using just language. But the fact that people speak the same language, while it might not mean that they are genetically related, it might mean, or it for sure means that they did share a society. At least they did share a society at some point, such that they did speak a language that was a common language. And then at some point, they separated and then they developed new languages from the initial language. And this is the case with the Somali and the Oromo. I don't speak any of the two languages. You can confirm to me if you speak either Oromo or Somali, whether those languages are close. My understanding is that they are very close. So that is the first evidence that these people, at some point, um, they lived in the same society. Now, if we are going to argue that that means that they were related or they come from the same ancestor, maybe, but not necessarily. But there is a likelihood they actually came from the same ancestor. But anyways, all humans came from the same ancestor at the end of the day. So at some point, they did come from the same ancestor. Now, of course, the question is whether that is very recent or maybe long time ago, and um, they've had a huge separation in their development. The second evidence that these people are they come from the same society is that they've lived together for quite a while. They've lived in the same neighborhood, despite the talk of, oh, these people came from I don't know where and these people came from I don't know where. For example, let's talk about the issue of Madagascar. I think it's just an argument that is thrown around. I don't know where that came from. If indeed they did come from Madagascar, there should have been people in Madagascar who look like Oromo. Looking at the people in Madagascar today, I don't think they look anything close to the Oromo. I don't think they do. If you ask me, they don't. And their languages are so far from what the Oromo people speak. So I think that's just some some joke that came to be taken seriously. Um, Now, number three is religion or religious practices. Um, Very many people, and I did a video about what was the belief system of the Somali before they became Muslim. And very many people, Somali people, admit that actually at some point, the Somali people shared in the belief of Waaq or in the belief of um, the religion of Waaq, which is the religion that we can say is the religion of the Eastern African region. And I've said this is a very interesting religion, and I'm trying to find resources so that I can understand more this religion because it's turning out to be very interesting to me. Now, the belief in Waaq is monotheistic, and that is important for one reason, at least to me. In a region, a larger region where believing many gods was common, starting with actually Egypt, which was like the most powerful civilization around. They believed in many gods. If you go to the West, they believed in very many gods. I remember I read Herodotus' book Histories, and he was discussing the different civilizations that existed. And remember, Herodotus wrote his book about 2,500 years ago. It's a very long time ago, around 400, 500 BCE. And he was describing the world then. And some of the things he talks about in the book is religion of different people. And I remember him talking about traveling to Egypt, and he did attempt to travel towards what we might not, maybe today we call maybe Libya. You enter those sites, and he tried to get information just beyond the Sahara Desert. He did not cross it, but he did talk to some people called the Numidians who lived in the Sahara then. And some people say the Numidians are the ancestors of the people we know today as the Berbers. I think that's what they are called. And he did talk to them, and they told him so many stories about the people who lived farther to the south. They told him some of them were very short people, and they were sorcerers, things like that. But then again, he did talk to this other part where he talks about those people worshipping goddesses like Goddess Minerva, which is very interesting because Goddess Minerva is one of the uh, gods or goddesses of the Greeks, but she was worshipped. We can say most likely going by the description, like the Sahel, um, she was worshipped there. And he did also talk about the worship of, I think it's Apollo in some parts of Africa. And that is interesting because if somebody worships Apollo and this Minerva, it means that they also believed in the larger pantheon of the Greek gods. And we have also to point out that the Greek gods were actually the Egyptian gods. Basically, they copied and they became the Greek gods. So this is a region that was a polytheistic region that people worshipped many gods. We can say 2,000, 2,500 years ago. Most people in this region worshipped many gods. But now, when you come to specifically the Horn of Africa, it becomes interesting that they had this Wakfana religion that was monotheistic. That's very, very interesting. And that religion is primarily among the Somali, the ancient Somalis, at least going by what so many people have told me and going by what I can read. And it's also among the Oromo people, and I've been told some other people who are neighbors of the Oromo, like the El Molo, who are Nilotic speakers, they actually also worship the same or have the same belief system. So the fact that the Oromo have this religion, nobody disputes that they nowadays actually known as their religion, but even very many people admit, many Somalis admit that their ancestors did actually worship Waaq. And in fact, some people have told me there are even towns that are called that name. So, which proves that these two people shared a belief system. So, if they shared a belief system and they shared a language, what does that mean? It means these two people uh, came from the same society, at least. At least they came from the same society. Now, what likely happened that a huge divide happened? I'm going to speculate. I need you to understand that. My speculation is that the huge divide happened when Arabs came from the Arabian Peninsula into the Horn of Africa. I think that's when the huge divide happened. And the Arabs come, of course, they are Muslim, and maybe even before they became Muslim, because even the Arabs were not forever Muslims, and they come. Um, but we can say more like during the time when they come with Islam, and they try to convert the people of the land. And some of them accept to be converted, and others don't convert easily. Now, seems like those who converted easily or fast, they ended up forming a new society. And I remember reading Richard Burton's book. He does give a similar theory that there are those who converted and they formed this new society, the Somali society. And those who refused continued being the other society, and that became the Oromo society. And actually, the name that the Somalis call the Oromo, some people have told me it means those who refuse to convert. But we also need to, I need also to say that today, a huge section of the Oromo are actually Muslims, so they did convert at least at some point. But maybe by the time they are converting, or maybe they converted at the same time, but they converted in another place and they evolved in differently and they became different societies. I don't know for sure. But I think Islam did contribute significantly into these people emerging as two different societies. That's my speculation, and I need you to understand that so that you don't say that I'm saying from a position of a deep knowledge or understanding. And again, I'm always welcome to I'm always welcoming people who would give me more information, correct me. That's how we build knowledge, is by trying to share ideas. If you think I'm giving ideas that are not what they should be, then you have the right to confront my ideas and provide counter ideas. That's how people grow knowledge. Those are my random thoughts.